Hey, yeah, what? Grab your bootstraps. Yeah, let's scale your growth. Here's the truth, Jack. We'll reach the globe, unveil the
Tanya,
notes.
what
Learn
the
to pivot,
fuck?
earn your digits. Won't burn, you'll get it. See, this is factual. Funds will show. Learn to flow with candid capital.
This is a Candid Capital interview. In these episodes, we host industry business professionals involved in the global tech ecosystem to discuss various topics related to tech, global economy, and building sustainable businesses and investments. Welcome to the Candid Capital podcast. In this episode, we explore the world of intelligent agents and AI powered automation with Christian Pedrosa, founder of Digi.AI and the winner of this year's Rio Web Summit pitch competition. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you. Thank you for
Great
the
to have
invite.
you here, and congratulations on the win in Rio. Jigai is clearly making a strong impression in the evolving conversation around productivity, AI co-pilots, and next-gen workplace tools. But before we get into that, I'd like to know a bit more about yourself and your founder journey and what led you to become a builder, and more specifically, a builder in the AI space.
Sure, and thanks again for the wishes and for being there and taking place in the whole comp. It was definitely a big win for us, right? Coming number one out of 1,400 startups. So I guess about myself, I'm originally from Rio de Janeiro. For those of you who are not familiar, there's a big rivalry between Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, the two biggest cities in Brazil. So unfortunately, I've been living in São Paulo for the last 4 years. But then after finishing high school in Rio, I went to the U.S. and did my university studies, my college studies there for 5 years, studying engineering. Ended up working as a Big Four consultant out of New York City, traveling, Monday through Thursday, racking up miles and hoping to get upgraded every time I had an opportunity with Delta Airlines, my airline of choice for most New Yorkers. And at that point, I worked with, at any given point in time, about 20, 30 big companies doing cybersecurity assessments. That's where I started my career as a security consultant. And when COVID happened, there was an opportunity to start a few areas that didn't exist in Deloitte, Brazil. So I accepted a challenge to come here, and that, I guess, was my first entrepreneurial adventure, staffing a team and trying to sell things that weren't sold before, but obviously with a brand and a team that was funded by someone else. So I had those handicaps over there. And I was going to start my own consulting practice when Nubank, which is Brazil's first unicorn and a fintech that came out of Sao Paulo and is now listed on New York Stock Exchange, came with an interesting offer to also stand up a new type of cybersecurity team, which was a team of consultants and engineers. So your typical cybersecurity team, they will tell you what you need to fix, where the risks are. And what we did is we would find the risks and then fix them as well with engineering hours. So I did that at Nubank for 2.5 years. And interesting fact there that led to the creation of Jigai. Congrats on the pronunciation, by the way. Uh,
Thanks.
was a volunteering program that I started at Nubank. We were teaching coding and Python specifically to low income public high school students. And we quickly learned that learning how to code is easy if you have the motivation and you're smart. And obviously, you have access to internet. But then interviews are the challenge. So we came up with this AI interviewer in 2023. This was pretty much a ChatGPT wrapper, so not a lot of code, just plug it into OpenAI. But we saw how powerful it was in terms of changing people's lives. So we decided to quit our jobs, at Nubank and
So,
give it a
so
try.
that The thing that you built, did it help people get jobs at Nubank, or was it to help Nubank interview people for jobs?
Yeah, so it helped people get jobs everywhere, not only Nubank, but other companies. So it was initially just an effort to teach coding, but we saw that smart kids from low income areas often had not structured language spoken at home. So because of that, they would perform poorly on interviews. And we addressed that problem by creating this tool that would interview anyone applying for any role and give feedback instantly. And that's what enabled those kids to get jobs that they otherwise wouldn't. So that was the initial intention behind what now became the startup.
Oh, interesting. Um, so when you were doing the cybersecurity and the consulting, were you also working a lot with AI agents and AI tools at that time?
Yeah, yeah. For the past 10 years, in 6 years before starting Digi.AI, which is the AI startup, I've been working with AI. First contact was in 2019, when the Cambridge Analytica scandal made the news. This was
Hmm.
that scandal in which allegedly this Facebook marketing partner tampered with the 2016 elections by layering other data sources on top of Facebook's API. So I was actually on the team that went over to Menlo Park and reviewed a lot of the code at Facebook and some of their partners with access to that data.
Oh, wow, that must have been an exciting time. Or I should say, interesting time.
Yeah, I mean, when you're there doing the thing, you never really have a sense of what that means and why that's important, right? You're always like, tired or needing more coffee or I don't know, wanting to go on vacation, but then 3, 4, 5 years later, you kind of see how important that was, right?
So for anybody listening that doesn't know what Jig.IE is, maybe you could explain what it is, how it works, what's the core problem it solves for users or teams, that sort of stuff.
Sure. So we're a B2B platform for big organizations. We focus on enterprise so that they can deploy conversational AI agents specifically in WhatsApp. So Brazilians love WhatsApp. It's a 99% adoption rate. And we love sending audio messages on WhatsApp. So not sure, Josh, if you noticed that when you were here, but people are always recording audio clips and sending them over to other people on WhatsApp. So what our tool does, it enables big companies to essentially use that type of conversation, sending audio messages and receiving and responding to them to scale their recruiting teams, their customer support teams, their debt collections teams, anything that requires communication at scale.
And so are you just doing that in Brazil or are you doing it in all of LATAM?
Yeah, we focus in big companies in Brazil, but because they're global companies, they use our technology in different countries. So we interact with people from 7 different countries through these Brazilian global companies mostly.
Okay. Um, and so are you planning to do more of this? I guess I would put it in the category of agent AI. Are you going outside of WhatsApp? Like, are you going to be using different platforms to deliver these messages? Like, what does it look like in a couple of years from now?
Yeah, I see WhatsApp. We see WhatsApp as in just conversations based on audio as the SaaS interface of the future. So it's just a lot faster to get information across if you're talking and listening, especially if you can like 2x or 1.5x audio messages that are incoming. But then in the back end, that's where the magic happens. So we integrate with CRMs, with payment infrastructure, with email, with scheduling, with any systems that you need us to integrate. We're able to do that.
Um, so you're one of these tools that I guess, could be part of, um, what's at a lot of these talks is that you could be a single company owner and employee. Like one person does everything by using all these tools. So, of the functions that you're providing, I would say, are you augmenting teams or are you replacing them?
We're augmenting team. While I don't believe in the one person company, I know it's a kind of buzz phrase being thrown around a lot, but it's hard, right? You need teams. You need someone who's better at sales. You need someone who's better at coding. It's very hard to find um, those two personalities in one, but you can definitely augment certain teams with this type of technology. Uh, and in doing that, there's always some type of replacing, if you will. That's I don't like that word anymore, but it's just raising the bar, right? So when we
Well,
have
jobs are changing, right?
exactly when we had cars come out, we distinguished this job that was following horses in towns and cleaning up literally after their dropping. So that's an extreme example, but that's a job that ceased to exist for a good reason. And I see AI causing waves in a similar fashion.
Well, in I guess the where you're seeing your product augment teams, have you seen how the jobs are changing? Like, for
Yeah.
example, one of my investment colleagues in another market was explaining in a conversation that he's now hiring less analysts
Mhm.
to do the work because there are tools out there that are kind of no longer requiring four analysts. You could just have
Yeah.
one, for example.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're seeing kind of like, at least in some of the white collar jobs, the number of people you need for the same job is less. But what are you doing with those people differently in the organization? So I would say for your space, what are you seeing?
Yeah. We see that entry level positions, which is highly repeatable, um, end up being the ones that are taken the first by AI, which means that a lot of the companies where we work with, the N1 or the most basic level of customer service or just operational service, if you will, it becomes more strategic. So whoever is looking for their first position in a big organization or in any kind of business that's ripe for disruption needs to think more strategically and more in terms of managerial skills because they're going to be managing AI agents. So we see that it raises the bar in terms of taking people away from very repetitive and really boring tasks to more interesting and business focused.
So you mentioned your one of your earlier projects that it was a wrapper. Um, what is your current one? Is it your own LLM model, or are you using something else?
Yeah, we use different foundational models and we build a lot of the infra that enables conversational AI agents to work at scale. So we plug into both OpenAI and DeepSeek. But let me give you an example. Um, if you have 10,000 people talking to you every day and you're using one number, Meta, who's the owner of WhatsApp, they're going to block your phone number. They're going to, clearly see that it's a bot sending messages. So one of the things that we came up with to address this is a way to distribute incoming messages over hundreds and hundreds of phone numbers so that we can work at scale. This is just one example of dozens of things we've built to deliver what seems like a simple service at scale.
You also mentioned that you have a lot of enterprises that are using your your product. Given that it's WhatsApp, are you also getting a lot of SMBs, like smaller businesses? I just noticed that a lot of, like, for example, Colombia, it seemed like everything there you did was on WhatsApp.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. In Brazil, basically most businesses operate out of WhatsApp. It's insane how that became a phenomenon like 20 years ago. So we focus now on the big companies because they have a better structure for accommodating a disruptive project. Like they'll have a PM and then, some type of director or executive who wants to see efficiency results. So our focus is really the enterprise for those reasons.
okay. Um, so are you seeing a lot of competition, like for doing the exact same thing? And
Yeah, I wouldn't say the exact same thing, but it's a big market. Listen, in the 2000s, people were building websites and because they had .com on their company name, that would 3x their valuation. But that's because people had an idea. They would build a website and they would come to investor pitches and be like, "Hey, this is our website. Look at how shiny it is," or "Look at what a great idea I have." Um, Venture capital has evolved since then, um, to have more of a private equity backbone, in that investors now are looking for companies solving real business problems. So it's hard to raise a pre-seed or seed round if you just have something shiny. So what matters at the end of the day is, are companies willing to pay for you to solve their problems, and are you making their lives better? So I would say that while competition is good and it's an indicator of a market that exists out there, at the end of the day, um, how good you are at solving business problems is what sets you apart from the competition, and obviously lessons you've learned throughout the way, because that helps you make better decisions.
so how have you differentiated yourself from some of the other ones that may seemingly be the same?
Yeah, when we enter scale, so if you work talking to maybe 5 or 10 or 20 um, customers using WhatsApp, there's plenty of off-the-shelf solutions that are cheaper than us, but we offer reliability and monitoring for above 2,000, 3,000. So that's what we focus on. Like we guarantee deliverability, and we own the entire number management portion of the business. So if you go to the smaller ones, you still need to buy your own SIM card, your own phone number, and register that so that you can use it. So we do that as a managed service. So I would say that's the biggest differentiation, and it's a headache that definitely enterprise customers don't want to have.
Maybe we could just walk it back just a second, just for the audience to
Yeah, yeah.
understand what it is that they're getting. So, like, if they decide to use your product and they need 1,000, what does that look like? Like, what are they doing exactly?
Yeah, so let's say you want to talk to 1,000 customers in a given day. Um, if you were to do that yourself, you'd have to get about, I don't know, 100, 200 physical devices, whether it's an iPhone or an Android. You need to buy 100 or 200 SIM cards, install them on each of these phones, and have a way to synchronize all of these so that you, as a manager, can see what customers are saying. You can monitor for how long they've been waiting. And then you need to stand up a team of 100 to 200 people so that, they can talk to these customers. With
So is
us,
this
it's
sorry?
agents.
So
Yeah.
is this Is the idea to be an alternative to a call center?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, okay, now I got
We
it.
can see it as a call, and thank you for that question, right? Because we're so into the details, but think about it as a call center in your pocket filled with AI agents without having
Okay,
human
so this
calls.
now makes sense because I was only thinking of like two possibilities here. One was kind of like the scam calling, and the other, the other was a call center. Because otherwise, why would you need so many phone lines? But if you're doing a switchboard in like in a prem center somewhere, then you would need to do all that. But I guess this kind of virtualizes it a bit and then automates it at the same time. Is that the idea?
Exactly, right? So you don't need human beings answering all those calls in a way that doesn't scale, right? So the AI agents are doing that, and your customers aren't waiting to talk to a specialist, if you will.
Okay, okay, yeah, no, this makes sense. And so the for the training of the AI agents, then I suppose they're using the enterprise data so that they're answering those calls the way that they want, or do you assist with the training?
Exactly. So there's an onboarding period in which we learn how a company addresses their customers given the business scenario. And then we train the AI agent to mimic that process. But many times we've been around in a sector for a while, so we can actually improve that process with things we've picked up along the way.
Okay, yeah, because I saw some of the sort of I wouldn't call it AI, but maybe this was something leading to it. But some of the call centers before they had pre-programmed decision trees, basically of things to say, and then depending on what the customer said, it prompted a different answer until it got stuck. And then when it gets stuck, it says hold the line for you to whatever. And I think even on some of the website chats, it's the same way. I think you can tell if they're using the old version or the new um, based on where it gets stuck. I think in the question lines, at least from a customer point of view.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, exactly. It's way more adaptive in a conversation, right? You're going to search through your knowledge and think about how to phrase any kind of response. It's not a hit one or hit two to talk to customer support or hit three for billing, yada yada.
so do you get, I guess, as them being a customer, do you get access to, I guess, certain levels of anonymized data so that you can continue to train your models more, or are you doing that independently in some other process or method?
Sorry, can you come again? Broke up a little bit. Yeah.
Um, in terms of like, for a lot of these, AI tools, you need data for more training and more building a better product. So with some of them,
Yeah.
you need some sort of access to the data. And so, like, are your customers allowing you to have access to any of their data to build
Yeah.
better products for them?
Yeah. In many cases, what we need to know is how to respond and what this agent's objective is. And data I will gather it along the way. So let's say you're onboarding some junior analysts to talk to your clients. You're gonna have some type of onboarding process, some materials that you want he or she to read. Some coaching. You might want them to shadow someone who's been doing this for longer, and that's exactly how you onboard an AI agent. So it's how to do the job. Um, that's the biggest bottleneck here in terms of training the AI agents. And then once you're doing the jobs, then it's an interesting piece because we start gathering data and learning what works and what doesn't in my negotiation strategies or whenever um, dialogue and try to and sale and try to make with the customers. Does that make sense? So think about us as human beings as we mature, and we try different approaches. I don't know, to dating, for instance, we find out that some work and some don't, and we tend to stick with the ones that work, with the jokes that have a good landing and work well. So that's kind of the next phase of AI agents. Not just go out and try to relate to a lot of people, whether in a dating context or not, but actually become good at it as you collect data.
Where do you think this is all going? Like, I mean, like as these models get better, I mean, your entire sales process, like from a customer standpoint, could essentially never deal with a person. I mean, I guess Amazon's like that,
Yeah,
but at least for more complicated sales. And I guess the other question I would have is, and maybe this isn't something that you could answer, but then there's the liability of when it goes wrong. You know,
yeah.
um,
I mean, we certainly have lots of controls to hand over some type of conversation to a human whenever it reaches a certain risk. But at the end of the day, I know I believe a lot in the future, and I think networking is going to be a lot more important than working on spreadsheets and getting the right formula to add up, or coding, and thinking as a team will have a much higher value than actually thinking by yourself. Um, so I don't think AI agents will ever replace our ability to make judgment calls and decisions based on all of the information that we have available. That's a very human thing that took thousands and thousands of years for us to decide what to do next. What do we? What's our free will? So that's an element that I don't see agents having. Um, but I see us at one point sticking to the settings in which those things are more important, such as networking or getting to know Josh, and understanding if I should allocate some of my business resources to his endeavors and his bets that he's placing that I don't know any about. Should I take that risk? Should I trust him? And at the end, I think those gut feelings and intuitions are still going to be more valuable than any type of real time data analysis with AI or not.
hmm. I mean, I think from a, I guess, kind of a futurist outlook, I do think that in real life meetings, events, networking, I think it's gonna grow. I think we had to go the other way, partly because we had digital transformation and then COVID,
Yeah.
and then out of COVID, everyone was locked away, so they're like, let's meet up. But now I think there's another reason. The other reason I think is that there's certain data points you get from a real world interaction,
Mm-hmm.
and then also with
Exactly.
all these AI tools, at the current moment, it's there's no check on what's real and who made what.
Exactly.
So until that gets figured out, it's kind of like, well, I'd like to meet this person in real life because I'm not sure they're real on LinkedIn, even though they have the verification check.
Yeah. Yeah. In some settings, that's like we ran a test with this big client, which is a drugstore. They're all over the country. And whenever a customer called in for support, we gave the customer the choice between talking to an AI agent or a human agent. And believe it or not, the data is really uncontestable that people prefer to talk to AI agents, even knowing that they're AI agents, because they're going to be more educated, they're going to be fast, they're going to solve their problems. Obviously, they need to be properly configured. So, in that kind of sense, right? I'm not sure if you've recently tried to call your utility company, whether it's for I don't know, electricity or landline, and talk to a human. It's not the best service, and it takes a while for you to talk to a human. So if you can get that immediately with an AI agent, that would really help you in your day because it'll save you like 10 or 15 minutes until you get to solve that problem. So,
I can't
can you,
speak to Brazil, but I think in Canada it's terrible so that churn is low. So that it's so hard to quit
yeah,
because you can't do it without talking to a person. And you get transferred to so many different departments. You get hung up on at least your first try.
yeah, that happens here too.
Yeah.
But it's just poor, efficient resource allocation, right? People should be given the right to pick what's best for them. That's what's better for the entire economy.
Um, so when you were preparing for like the Rio Web Summit, like take me through kind of the experience of pitching. This was your first time pitching with Rio Web Summit, right?
At the Web Summit, yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
So what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, we fundraise. We've had, we're going through our third fundraising round. We're raising a seed round. So it's something that we do a lot. And it's always the same pitch. The challenge here was shortening it to a 3 minute um, span and practicing a lot. So, for those of you who didn't listen or who weren't there, obviously, it's 3 rounds. The first one you're pitching against 7 other startups, and the top two ones pass to the semifinals. And it's the top eight competing among each other, and then on the finals, it's the top three who get to pitch on center stage. So the first round, which is technically the easiest, was the hardest because until that point you didn't know if your plan was going to work or not. So if you pick 2 out of 7, that's pretty good confirmation that you're on the right track. So you just stick to the plan and
So
go all the way to
you
the
didn't
end.
start with the poem to see
Oh,
where that would get you.
no, no. I did try to be a little bit. This smart person once told me that a good salesman conveys a lot of information, and a great salesman conveys a lot of emotions and feelings. So I was going after that in my pitch, right? Trying to get people engaged because at the end of the day, I can read up on whatever I want online, but I can't feel a certain way by looking at some type of article or reading some type of ChatGPT prompt. I think you could at one point, but it's different than experiencing a live pitch with an audience and on stage.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult to do in 3 minutes. I mean, I know with some of the pitches that I've organized, I've given them 2 minutes.
Yeah,
And, I would say there's been a couple of things that probably impacted the investors remembering them. It's where they were in the order,
yep,
they won. And the other is you either needed to have a very, very notable epic fail on stage.
yeah,
So they would remember you for that fail, whatever it is, good or bad, something to that effect. Or you needed to have something that's like different in the story because now everyone believes the best pitch is going to have sort of that story process.
yeah,
But even though that's what people are doing, too many of their stories are sounding the same, which is really bad ad.
yeah.
Um, and so I think that's why the ones that are humorous usually get remembered.
Exactly. Yeah. So humor is a good one, but I'm curious, as a judge and someone who does this a lot, what do you think is the best order if you as a contestant could pick?
If I know it's going to be really big shock value, um, I would probably want to be first.
What do you mean shock value?
I'm going to do something, maybe there'll be something controversial in there. Maybe there'll be something that's going to, there's no way they're not going to remember. Maybe I decide to make my slides flashing pink,
Okay.
because nobody's going to do that because it's ridiculous. But they're going to remember, they're going to be able to cue something in their memory related to that. potentially it would go first in that case. If I'm just kind of, I would say, confident and just kind of going on like the numbers, the traction, all that stuff's really good, then I want to
Yeah.
go last.
Okay.
Because it's always best to be first or last in general. But I do think that, because the thing is, it depends how many companies. Like, let's say in your case, there's seven that you're going to. If you haven't said anything of note and you're the first one up, and you're just
Yeah.
all nerves because you were the first person up, there's a good chance they're not going to remember you by like the fourth one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then everyone's going to remember the last one. That's just how human brains work. Like you're just going to remember the last one.
Yeah.
So if you're unfortunately stuck in between the first and the last, you're going to have to do something to make you stand out inside that middle part. So whether that's a compelling story or you have a really good win that you can highlight. Like maybe you have a piece of press that you're going to release a little bit earlier just for the presentation to kind of draw
Hmm.
some excitement, maybe. But like outside the competition in terms of pitching, because I think there's two pieces. If you're a judge who receives the information on the startups before the pitch, so you know what the company is and you can go look them up, or they provide a pitch deck,
Yeah.
then it doesn't really matter. It's going to come down to whether it's a good business or not.
Yeah.
If it's a blind pitch where they don't get the information ahead of time and they come, then it's going to come down to heavily who does the best presentation of the pitch, and then secondly, the business logic behind it.
Hmm.
That's what I would say. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you are still pitching, but if they're not getting information ahead of time, then they're going to be biased towards whoever does the best communication on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like that communication is key. Yeah, but it's an interesting perspective that there's a lot of knowing how human brains remember things, and if you can navigate that the right way, maybe you have an advantage, even if your business isn't that good. But in terms of getting scored, right?
Well, it's like I tell a lot of our startups and the companies that I've done some coaching with. The goal is not to get the money at the pitch. The goal is to get the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really all the pitch is about. Like, stuff's not going to be perfect. People expect that. The follow up deck, the deck that gets emailed, that's expected to be perfect.
Yeah.
But, like on stage, they know you're tweaking it or you're going to do something. And, people are forgiving. I mean, don't get me wrong, some investors are assholes, but, generally speaking, people are fairly forgiving on the stage. But your goal at a pitch, apart from winning, is to get the meeting. Because
Mm-hmm.
even if you didn't win, let's say hypothetically you didn't win the Web Summit contest, but you ended up with 10 calls from very good VCs and one
Mm-hmm.
or two of them decided to invest in you, then you won,
Yep. Yeah.
essentially. So, I think the goal is to get the meeting. And to get the meeting, you have to hit on certain pressure points for the investor while also using some marketing tactics to kind of stand out at the same time. Because
Yeah.
like their job is to look at pitch decks. Their job is to talk to founders. So they're hearing the exact same thing over and over again. So what could you do differently? I would say to kind of make you stand out. Because I get it. All the products are different and special, and all the founders. But when you have a stack of pitch
Yeah.
decks that you're going through, and you're going through all these data rooms and all this stuff, it's not that case. And
Yeah.
so,
For sure.
if you end up in the middle of that pile as well, like you have to have some way of I think differentiation. I think a large part of it is focusing on differentiation on all levels, and then really communicating, your track record.
Yeah.
And again, you guys only had 3 minutes, but I think one thing that was a little bit lacking with many of the presenting teams is at this early stage, there is it's not an exact science.
Mm-hmm.
There is some traction indicators, but for super early, the team matters, and really understanding more about like the founding team's background
Yeah.
and why you are going to be able to deliver on what you're suggesting. And I think that's at least at the early stage, and that's where I focus mostly on.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the later stage companies, you can look at different attributes that are more on, I would say, the quantitative side. But I would also say for all the things I'm suggesting as advice right now, you can throw out the window as well, because I'm sure every investor has kind of their own kind of ideas and formulas, and
Yeah.
all of them will look at a pitch deck and they'll like this part and they won't like this part, and they'll really like this piece and they won't. I
Yeah.
know for me, I hate pitches that are so focused on explaining the market
Okay.
and the market opportunity, because like analysts don't need that. They're going to go look at that anyways. It's $1 billion market. Got it. Get it. Who are you selling it to? Focusing on the sell side of the market as opposed to it's this big and Tam Sam Song, which are really just educated forecasts anyways.
Yeah.
So spending 30 seconds talking about that, you wasted 30 seconds of your time. I would rather you just say 135 with a big B, a little Gardner link next to it, or pick your analyst house, and then you can go look it up yourself. But I
Yeah.
mean, like, at the end of the day, that's not what's really critical. It's your traction, your go to market, your team. It's more the business side stuff, and then the team. Like I would say, I would spend more time on those.
For sure.
Um,
And and from the founder's perspective, and thanks for sharing that. So we're raising around. I think I talked to between 80 and 90. I lost count, even though I have a spreadsheet. VCs in a span of 60 days. So like 5, 6 pitches a day. And I still feel like it's playing roulette and not the black or red roulette, just the pick a number roulette, and hopefully you'll hit one of the 100 numbers. We get all types of past reasons. Check size is too big. Check size is too small. Not enough traction. Too much traction. This one CVC told me that they don't think AI is going to be a real thing, and they want to see how it all plays out. Obviously, there's patterns, but there could be so many things like in some funds, like they like you, but they're busy doing other deals, or they don't have time to look at the data room, or they won't answer you fast enough, or they won't answer you at all. So it's interesting for sure, because it's a numbers game, and there's people on the other end, and there's many different factors that need to align. I'd say for you to get a
well,
term sheet.
yeah, I mean, I would just say that it is like doing an enterprise sale when you've never had an enterprise sale. You have to learn your target, your prospect. You have to learn how
Yeah,
their decisions are made in that
good point.
organization. And the different vectors for it. Like there's the human element, there's the organizational element, and those two pieces you kind of have to look at in order to close, because again, you've heard so many different. I've never heard the reason too much traction um, before,
Yeah, like you're a
but
little bit too late. We're early stage. We like to get in on pre-seed, so you're too far along, a little bit too late. We've got some of those.
oh, okay, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I mean, like each house has a different strategy.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the companies that I've worked with that have raised, it's the same story. You go through like 100, even more than 100 pitches before you kind of raise that critical investor, I would say. But again, I think if you're strategic about it, and you're building an actual business and not an
Hmm.
idea,
Exactly.
um, then I think it becomes more directed, and I think you struggle a little bit less. The
Yeah.
other thing too is the more money you raise, the more money you're going to raise, or you're going to be in that sort of on that wheel, because every founder that we've had that has raised a significant amount of money, they end up spending a lot more time dealing with investors as opposed to operations
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And that's just kind of the nature of it. So I mean, all of it, it's a marathon. So that's how I would look at it, as opposed to I need money today. Hey, can I get some money? And then you don't hear about them for like a year, and then they come back. That doesn't. I don't think that works very effectively unless you're executing on a very high level, and you
Yeah.
can kind of dictate um, that kind of experience.
Yep. Especially with enterprise, right? It takes a while until you can close and see the checks from an enterprise contract hitting your bank account as a startup.
Like, have you or are you raising with corporate venture, or is it just VC?
Yeah, I mean, we talked to a few corporate venture groups, um, but are you part of a corporate venture? No.
No, we're a family office.
Okay.
So, our stuff is, again, we're super early.
Yeah.
Again, because we're a family office and we write so many checks, they're smaller. So they tend to be companies that are pre-seed, usually
Yeah.
around that area.
Yeah. What I've heard from a few like funds that are well known, the tier ones, is that CVC is kind of kryptonite if you want to go to Series A or Series B, and it's kind of frowned upon by the tier one funds. That's what I've heard from different
Mm,
sources.
I could see that. I mean, I think that might also depend um, on the CV, because like some of them they syndicate with some of the big firms, and it also depends is if their fund is a separate entity from the host. So, for example, some of them they create a side venture org, and so
Yeah.
then their incentives are based on the performance of their investments. All they
Yeah,
really have
that's
for a
ideal,
thesis
right?
is they have to do it in a particular industry. Whereas ones like, say, I believe Salesforce works this way. Their investing is internal, so everything they invest in has to benefit the company's main lines of business.
Yeah.
And then there's a chance they might buy you. Um, so it depends on which ones, and then you'd have to also probably look at some of them syndicate with some venture firms. So that
Mm-hmm.
would also show a pattern, and then you can see if those companies that have received funding from those CVCs, whether or not they've exited traditionally. Usually, they don't actually end up exiting through the CVC quite often.
Okay.
So I would say it would depend. The other question you have to ask yourself is, I know it's always hopeful to be in the top tier VC, but is the top tier VC the right one for the right type of target for your business? Is there other venture firms, different levels, or maybe less popular, but also very
Yeah,
well capitalized? That makes
exactly.
sense.
And well connected, and I'm just saying that I've heard this about, corporate venture, but the reality is most startups don't get a tier one, and a lot of these that don't get a tier one also become successful businesses. So,
Yeah, and again, like I said, I think you also got to look at the markets. Like, I don't know if, for sure, but it seems like Europe does a lot of corporate venture.
hmm.
That seems to be like a very big area there, and some of those corporations have offices in different cities around the world because they're looking for companies to invest in to solve their problems. And I would also make the assumption that this is because R&D spend has dropped dramatically across industries of large
Hmm.
multinationals over the last few decades. And I
Yeah.
think where they're picking up the slack on not the R&D funding is buying up good good technology companies that solve their issue for their industry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. It's all true.
So again, I don't know for sure, but again, it's more of a strategic thing. I mean, you have to kind of look at where you want, what direction you want to take your company.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, and a lot of it. I mean, obviously, we do plannings and strategy, and we think as a group about where the market's going to be, what companies are going to buy. But especially with AI, it's just so fluid. So, like you said, and when it's early stage, it's the team's ability to pivot towards where the market is, that might be a better predictor of success rather than how good is their 5 year plan, because no one knows really how 5 years is going to play out, um, at the end
well,
of
I
the
think
day.
forecasts are they're wishful thinking for a startup. I mean, I don't take much stock in the forecast, except that I do look at it as a gauge on the leadership as to what reality they're living in and what
Yeah,
promises they can deliver time over time. So, I wouldn't, if you gave a really ridiculous forecast, that I would hesitate, on that. And then if
yeah,
I've already been working with you and you've been giving consistent forecasts, and how often are you hitting it, and how far are you away from hitting it?
yeah,
Because this is it's just another vector for ability to execute. But at the end of the day, when there's a forecast, I don't expect it, and especially in the current environment, we're talking about AI related companies. I don't even know at this point.
yeah.
I'm sure there's other investors that say they know.
Hmm.
I have no idea. It seems to be moving quite quickly, and everyone I talk to that's working in it directly, it seems like the time horizon keeps getting shorter and shorter, which means it's very different than a SaaS company where it's
Hmm.
14 years to build it to exit it
Yeah,
on average. So you have to figure out really your go to market is going to be incredibly important. I think that is what a lot of I would suspect other investors are focusing on to go to market and team to execute because speed is required more. I think with these AI businesses, unless you're building everything from the ground
hmm,
up, then that's a different type of investment.
yeah. With a lot of capital, needed up front, then it's a different type of
Yeah, but
defensibility. Yeah,
also then the teams own more of the, I'd say, proprietary stuff, which might
exactly.
have a strategic imperative, which is also a possibility on that. Well, how much are you guys raising? Like
We're
what is that?
raising $2 million USD.
Okay, and are you doing raising in the U.S. or you're just from the Brazilian market?
We're talking to funds from different geographies. We see bigger appetite from funds that want to lead around in Brazil because it's pre-seed. And the big names, we talk to them, but it's mostly the big American names they want to follow and see what kind of traction you're going to have over the next year or two. That's what I've seen,
Hmm.
at least, because of the currency, right? So for us, the 2 million round is huge. To some of the funds we talked to the US are like, well, we love everything, but it's just too small.
Oh, yeah, they want to invest more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know it makes sense. Well, I mean, if you look at like how much funding these funds have raised over the last few years, and then
Yeah.
what is required for a first check now versus what it was like just even like 3 years ago. It's kind of it's a different scale for sure than it was
Yeah.
before. Um, so with the what would you what would you I guess recommend, or what kind of feedback would you give to the up and coming startups that will pitch at the next Real Summit? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I'd say practice as much as you can. So I think I did about at least 30 dry runs, mostly, by myself, just rehearsing in my own mind.
You mean you didn't use that AI tool for job interviews? You
No,
didn't
no,
just
no, no.
augment it for pitching?
No, no. Our engineers were too busy with other, silly client stuff. They didn't want to help me. But anyways, just having so I knew word for word, especially on the finals day. So, like you said, it's a lot more of a pitch competition than may the best business win. Even though the media repercussion may make it look a different way. So I think if you
Well,
go with, yep,
I think at the end of the day, though, aiming for the best business to win is probably what's going to get you over the line.
yeah, yeah, I agree. But um, like I was talking to people who were there last year. Did you watch the finals last year?
I don't even remember. To be
Yeah,
honest, I go to so many events, I have a hard
yeah,
time keeping track of all of them.
yeah. So I heard like the second place was just somewhere short of almost curing cancer with AI or something like that. But the pitch wasn't very good, and the stage presence wasn't strong. The humor, the storytelling. That's why she didn't win. And the
Well,
first one was
I was at a pitch contest once,
yeah.
a fairly large one, where the winner won for a product that didn't exist
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
and no revenue, but it was quantum computing, so they won, and that was kind of the technology favorite of the year.
yeah,
I mean, once quantum computing works, I'm sure she'll have a great business, but from my understanding, from what you explained, there was no business.
no, it's starting to. It's making. I'd say it's the new AI. It will be the new AI in like 5 years from now. That's my best guess.
Maybe I'm pretty cynical on that one. There's some real technological breakthroughs that are required
Yeah, so maybe
for
not
that
5 years.
to even be close. I mean, it doesn't really start to get good, I think, till 100 cubics is kind of
Yeah.
the magic number. But there's a material science problem, I think, with it that's going to make it difficult to be
Yep.
sort of mainstream. It's going to be an industry base. It'll be used in probably deep in the back that you won't even notice for many years until they solve that problem.
Yeah. Similar to AI, right? And so we had ChatGPT and the
Yeah,
Transformers really in what 2012. AI is and the models with activation functions and all of that, they've been around since just shortly after World War II. And people took different attempts at it. They thought the transistor was enough, but it wasn't, right? So it cooked for
for
about 30.
sure. I'm not convinced yet that it has that it's going to have that outside of very specific industries. You know,
I
like
see.
cybersecurity, communications, like for sure,
Yeah,
it's already being used there. But like I said, I don't know. I just know that there are some real technological barriers that we're not close to solving yet.
yeah,
And in some cases, it's been explained they're not sure if they're solvable. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be the new desktop computer. I'm not too sure about that.
yeah. Or the new AI, the new ChatGPT.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to do still in that sort of that network space. But again, I'm always rationally cynical. Until there's sort of like I was never, I would say, for or against AI. I just never thought it was that exciting. In general, because there was a hype cycle in 28, was it 2018, with AI, and then it disappeared, and then it came back in like 2021, and it's not gone away. So, and it's kind of like cloud. Nobody says I'm a cloud enabled business anymore. So
Hmm.
I think we're just sort of in the beginning of the hype cycle of AI, but eventually it'll be it'll no longer be mentioned. It'll just be something that's ubiquitous in everything.
Yeah,
Likely.
yeah, just like cloud,
Yeah.
or the internet.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think that's likely, it's just part of the phase. But I think the difference with quantum is it's a very deep tech type
yeah.
of
From a
innovation with a lot of cost related constraints
mhm.
based on, how the tech is right now. Will it get there? Probably. Everything seems to get somewhere at some point. But I don't think it's linear, and I don't think it's required for quantum to be the thing. But like I said, I'm not really working on the research. I just bump into those guys sometimes and ask them, "So are we there yet?" So kind of is how it's looking. So just to wrap up with a couple, quick fun questions, since we're coming to the top of the hour here. Um, are you reading or listening to anything that's inspiring or influencing your work at the moment?
Yeah, yes to both. So I try to listen to a lot of podcasts. 20VC is good for getting insights into the market and talk to very smart people in the AI space, or to hear them talking. I would say that um, Lex Freeman is one that I like when I go on a long road trip and my son's in the back sleeping, or and my wife is asleep as well, so I can talk about or hear people, smart people, talk about black holes and some of these space time theories that, as an engineer, I enjoy, but similar to quantum computing, aren't as profitable just yet. And reading, I try to read a book a month. Currently, I'm reading Work Rules, which is the first CHRO at Google, and I try to correlate whatever I read with the moment of our startup. And we're getting to the point where we're 14 people. So I need to start thinking about culture and how I make people want to work at the company, because if we get good people to work there, it becomes a self healing process in which they come up with good solutions. So that's what I'm reading and listening to. I've been listening to Lex Friedman for a while now.
Okay. Yeah, I listened to some of his. I mean, for a lot of these guys, I kind of just hop in when they're talking to somebody on a topic that I
Yeah,
kind of think is
same.
interesting, and then drop out. I mean, I can't remember the last Lex one I listened to. I think it was the guy who was, I think they did the episode in the jungle or something, like on the
Yeah,
jungle.
that one was interesting, but they're long, right? They're like 3 4
Yeah.
hours long. So, and he often goes, like, he's now doing a lot of world figures like Zelensky, or
We had Moody.
yeah, exactly. So that's not that interesting of a conversation, in my opinion. You're just gonna say whatever it's is PC, as
Well,
opposed
yeah,
to
they're very structured.
exactly. Yeah,
Unless you can get them to drink a little bit, or take, as I guess Joe Rogan would say, take some mushrooms and then have a conversation with them.
yeah, exactly.
Um, so the next question is, given everything you've done now, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self? What piece of advice would you give your younger self?
That's a good one. I'd say just um, be aware that people around you kind of don't really know what the fuck is going on too. So you don't have to always be 100% sure about everything because a lot of people aren't. So place your bets. Believe that your math is accurate. Gather more information. I think that would be a good way to manage anxiety as a young lad growing through your career.
And what's your, I guess, go-to health and wellness hack?
Yeah, diet and exercise. So at least once a day. Try to go to the gym, play soccer twice a week. So that's good for cardio. And eat your vegetables. It's insane. Yeah, if you eat well, like you sleep better, you have more energy. Um, don't get me wrong, I love McDonald's and a nice double quarter pounder, but that makes you feel bad physically the next day.
Yeah, that sounds very difficult, especially when you were living in New York. All those fantastic restaurants around.
Yeah, and pizza's not that bad, right? But yeah, that's one thing I really miss New York pizza. If you've ever been to Joe's Pizza, you know what I'm talking about.
And just the last one, um, you know, what is your top can't live without productivity tool or AI tool if you got a favorite? Since the topic's been a little bit
Mhm.
about AI.
Let's see. I'm gonna have to go with WhatsApp. It's just everything is in WhatsApp nowadays, so it's a business tool. But if you really wanna hear what works for me is just literally Notepad. It's where I keep my to-do list. And I spend a lot of time reprioritizing. As a founder, you never have enough time. So I dedicate at least 20 minutes a day to understanding everything that I'm supposed to be doing and gauging whether what I'm doing right now is what's best for the company.
No, that's nice to hear. Your low tech is your go to productivity
Yeah,
app.
well, at least it's not handwritten. It's not handwritten. I've given people shit for using, notebooks for their to-do lists. Because
Yeah.
come on, we're an AI startup, but Notepad is fine.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for doing the podcast. Much appreciated. It was great to see you pitch on stage at Rio Web Summit, and again, congratulations on making it to the end. And good luck on your raise. And for anybody that's listening out here, I will be sharing links and information on how they could get a hold of you if they're interested. And if there's anything that you would like to say to the audience in terms of where they can follow you or any information you'd like them to have, this would be like the time to do it.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. It was a great chat, Josh. I appreciate your question and how natural it felt. So, to the audience, just if you stuck along until this point, thank you for that. Happy to connect on LinkedIn and continue the conversation.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
You can find information about the Candid Capital podcast on the website, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Episodes can be found on Spotify and other podcast platforms. A quick reminder that this is infotainment and is not intended to be professional advice, malicious, or hateful. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of employers, partners, and their subsequent connected private and public associations or organizations.
We canned it, I hope you understand it. Your business growth, we planned it, yeah. This ain't for show, we stamped it, yeah. Yeah, no FOMO, everyone come join, no solo. This all factual, from me to you, this candid capital.